Hey guys, so as Bitcoin kind of trickles its way sideways here, I wanted to show you a really easy way that you can know the next move for Bitcoin, or whether that's a Forex chart or any other cryptocurrency. Really simple method to know what's coming next. So if we look at the 4-hour here, we know that we had this ascending type channel, right? And then we had a smaller ascending type channel, which we ultimately broke out of to the downside. Since that point, we've had some continuation patterns, and now we're kind of in this descending type channel, right? What comes next for Bitcoin is in understanding what came before. So what do I mean by that? If you look at what happened in the past here, so we had this pattern here, right? It's more of an expanding type pattern. Even if you draw it from here, it doesn't change anything. It's more of an expanding type pattern. Then we kind of dropped down a bit and developed this pattern here, which we ultimately sold out of. So I want to ask you a question here. Look at the previous price action. So look left from current price action and look at what has happened in the past. What do these patterns have in common? They're corrective and they're ascending. And we know anytime we have an ascending pattern like this, the expectation, if it's corrective, is that we're going to get that move to the downside eventually, because it's not sustainable for price to move up in a corrective manner long term. So we know that we're going to get that move to the downside. So I want to clarify this. We have a descending type channel, which would indicate a move to the upside, right? However, if you look at this and you look at the current price action, we had an impulse, just a correction continuation pattern, an impulse, another continuation pattern. What would you expect to happen next? So if we look at what happened in the past, we have this pattern here, both ascending in nature. Both of these patterns ended up in a sell, ended up in a move to the downside. If you go down even further and you look at this pattern here, what does this pattern look like? It looks exactly like this pattern. So if this just kind of trickled its way sideways for a bit and then eventually sold off, what would you expect this pattern to do? This is very overlooked. Just looking left and seeing what the patterns have done in the past, and not 10 years ago, just a few weeks ago or a few days ago, can give you a really good idea of what is coming next. So the potential for Bitcoin is a few different things. So we could move down, move back up, go all the way to the trend line here, right? Like we did here. And then eventually get that sell. So even if we broke the trend lines are not absolute and they don't mean a whole lot. What matters is the pattern and the nature of how price action is moving. So even if we broke out of the pattern and then just kind of moved away like this, that's not going to change anything, and we're still going to be expecting this to move to the downside. Why? Because we just have a bigger version. So that pattern is less likely to happen, but just keep that in mind. So even if we, let's say, turned around, moved all the way up to here, and then fell off, what would that give us? It wouldn't change anything, right? We'd still have an overall ascending type pattern. It would just give us that one more high to then sell. So we're looking at this for a descending channel, right? We know that normally a descending channel would be a sign of a reversal. Here is the caveat to that. So we have an impulse, a continuation pattern. And so because we have this, it changes things. So we had this smaller descending type channel here, right? Which we broke out of to the upside, but we know we broke out and we broke out very correctively. There wasn't a whole lot of momentum to the upside. And because we did that, that changes the nature of how this is moving. And so because we have this as a continuation pattern, we could very well just move along like this even move all the way to here, get that sell, and then break the trend line. Right? Break the trend line and keep going, because we have that continuation pattern. So from here, I would simply look at selling opportunities, because we know that this pattern here played out in a sell. And so even if this goes bigger and deeper all the way to the trend line, we know that it looks very, very, very similar to this. And so a sell is expected. So it can be as simple as that. We can just look behind us, look to the left and see, okay, we had this pattern here, that sold. We had this pattern here, that sold. We had this pattern here, that sold. We had this ascending type pattern here that sold. And so expecting this to do anything other than sell at this point doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the only thing that would change this from a sell to a buy is a change in nature. So let's say we broke out of this ascending type channel, this continuation pattern to the downside. So we broke out here, for example. We broke out here and then we moved down correctively. Or even if we broke out and then moved down correctively and got a bigger corrective move to the downside, any kind of corrective movement like this to the downside, that would change things, right? Because we know that if we don't move out with momentum, then we may not get that bigger move to the downside. We may just get a smaller momentum to the downside, maybe a descending channel like this, and then that move all the way back to the upside. The potential is to even break that if we get this pattern, because we know that if that does happen, we could easily go all the way to the top here, the beginning of the pattern, to 8,600. But that's contingent on this breaking out and doing so correctively, and then moving to the trend line correctively in a descending type channel. If it moves out with momentum and we get heavy momentum like we've seen, then it's less likely for that to happen. The only other thing that would indicate a reversal there at the trend line, if we do get there with momentum, is a pattern like this. So if we have a retrace candle, so if we have an impulse down and then a candle that retraces that impulse, then we may look at that for a possible reversal to come back up to the upside, maybe to the trend line, or even all the way up to this high here. But as of right now, the only scenario we can look at that makes sense, just looking at what has happened here in the past couple weeks, is a sell, because we know this pattern here looks very similar to this pattern here, even if it goes a little bit bigger, even if it breaks the trend line here and moves sideways and does it correctively. We know that ultimately this should break to the downside. So that's an easy way that you can figure out exactly what should come next in any pattern. Just look at what has happened previously inside of that pattern or even outside of the pattern. It'll give you a really good idea of what price action could do in the future and the possibilities. So that's going to do it for this video. We do appreciate you guys and the support you have shown us. We appreciate the messages, the comments. It means a lot to us to know that these videos are making an impact and you guys are actually learning from them. That's the whole reason we started this channel in the first place. There's a ton of bad information, there still is, in the crypto world for new traders, new people coming into this market. You can lose a lot of money with bad information, bad strategy, and so we wanted to be that voice of reason, give you an accurate strategy of how the market actually does move. So we appreciate your support. We look forward to producing more and more videos like this. If you have a suggestion for a video, we're always open for that. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care now.